Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Specifically waited for me to do my after my last beverage drink of before we went live. You just waited until I was like, See, because that's what I did, folks. I did this. I went, and he started in the middle of that. That's unfair. Hang on, wait. Flag on the play. I got flags now. I got everything. Whatever you need.
Wait, is that a handkerchief?
It's a flag.
I was going to say, are you to the age now where you're carrying boogers around in your pocket?
I've never carried boogers around in my pocket. My dad used to. My dad used to have a whole. I never understood that either. I mean, I guess I do, kind of, but had an entire drawer of hankies. And my mom pressed them. She washed them.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But while we're talking about flags on the play, we've got a lot of great sponsors.
We do.
I think our sponsors are the absolute best. But did you know that we also, God, I don't want to get bombarded. I shouldn't have said that. But Anyway, I do just want to say Something to Wrestle with. Bruce Prichard is sponsored the Deer Park Escorts, the drill team for the Deer Park, Texas drill team. Now, the story behind this is a beautiful young lady, Jennifer. Okay. And Jennifer, I was there when she came home from the hospital many, many, many years ago. And she now has a daughter named Ava. And sent me this beautiful little, she has a last name too. Her last name is Morrow. Sent me a beautiful little card thanking us. And we sponsored the Deer Park Escorts and hope they have a great season this year. They're a great drill team. I know that because Jennifer, her mom, is the drill instructor. So there. And her mom before that, Yvonne, was a drill instructor and a great dancer and everything else. So there. Just want to say that beforehand. I said it.
So if you would like for Bruce Prichard to sponsor your initiative, be sure to send him a DM on Twitter at Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad.
At Bruce Prichard.
Yeah, well, you know what'll happen there.
Well, they won't get read. They will get skimmed right over.
It'll be just like sending something to Silva.
What a great joke. Man.
True. You know why it's funny? Because it's true, right? I mean, those are the best kind.
In fairness, could you access your emails from yesterday?
I'm sure I could. I could over here. Yes. The answer to that question, counselor, is yes.
We're having a lot of fun. We hope you guys are too. We had a blast last week with Ask Bruce Anything. And Bruce, I think you had fun too. You threw an audible. You said, "Hey man, that was so fun. Let's do it again." What do you like so much about these Ask Bruce episodes?
Because I don't have to prepare.
Oh, well, there you go.
Because I find it absolutely amazing where the minds of some of our listeners are, what they're interested in, the kind of questions that they ask, what they remember. I love to hear your some things. I go, we did what? And I may not always have all the answers, which is most of the time, but I do love getting to know and getting to just a better vibe as to where our audience's heads are, what headspace they're in, what they're interested in, and maybe what we can do more of and or less of.
I really enjoy these Ask Bruce Anythings, but we did get, more often than normal, the same question over and over and over. Mark Golden even specifically asked, "Bruce, why can't you talk about current events?" I've tried to explain this till I'm blue in the face on Twitter, but I think they'd rather hear it from the horse's mouth.
Oh, well, I'm happy to explain because I work there now, and because it's things that are taking place in the now that would jeopardize things in the future, and talking about things that are going on now as far as creative and behind the scenes and things of that nature are something that I agreed not to talk about. That was part of my agreement originally when I came in. When I'm gone, it's all cool. But while we are doing it, while I am here and employed by WWE, I agreed not to discuss what is taking place now. We talk about generalities, hey, the PLE's coming up and things like that, but not going to talk about what's going on now and in the here and the now and the why and why nots. That's for later on. This show started as the question, frankly, I gave the name to Tony Schiavone, but people would always ask me whenever they would see me, hey, what happened when, so-and-so and so-and-so did this? And that's how we kind of came up with this show. It was a nostalgia show to talk about what happened, when, or why did we do this? Or, hey, do you remember this case? And what was the reason for doing that? And that is why we want to keep with that theme of the show.
Well said. There you go. Straight from the horse's mouth. And you also heard, if you were listening, because listening is your friend, we'll talk about all this eventually. Just, not right now. Eventually, one day, someday, Bruce will get tired of going into the office 9 days a week. And he'll just floating around the pool. This is
my office here.
Yeah, I get that. I'm for it. But like I know, not that many years ago in the scheme of things, you just spent the day floating around the pool looking for Korean barbecue and waiting to record twice a week. And it was a blast. Yeah. Those were the good old days. But
yeah, that's back when it was a little bit different schedule, a little rougher. I had to work like sometimes 4 hours a week.
It was terrible.
And it was, yeah. But I had my 11 a.m. bike ride every day. I'd go 11 to noon in those blazing hot Texas sun, ride for an hour, and go on great bike trails by my house. And then I would come back and I would try to get as chocolate as I could get.
Roll Tide. We'll be there again one day. Looking forward to it. Hey, let's do a bunch
of... I'm working on it. See, a little redder than... I'm working on it a little bit.
How are you starting to get tan in October, Bruce? It's not like you're spending a lot of time outside in October.
I just got back from Mexico.
Oh, that's right. Forgot.
Mexico.
That's that rich people shit.
And then the next weekend I went to Santa Barbara. Did I roll my R's right there, Silva? I went to Santa Barbara the next weekend.
By the way, I got blown up. Lots of people saying, why haven't you eaten a Jack in the Box taco? What's the big deal? Just go eat one. It's like, there's not any Jack in the Boxes here. There's no Jack in the Box here. I can't go do that. I mean, I would if I could, but there aren't any.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I binged in the last 3 weeks being in the Pacific side of the country where Jack in the Box was plentiful. And oh my gosh, I binged on Jack in the Box tacos. Love it. But it was more than that. I told the story about.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was more than that. It was the fact that they told me I couldn't.
Yes.
Eat that. I was like, yes, I can.
Here we go. Watch.
Yeah.
Let's take some questions. Lee Milton wants to know, if Brother Love ever turned face, how would he have liked to have done it, and interviewing who?
I don't think that the character Brother Love ever could have been a babyface, because the sheer nature of Brother Love was based in the roots of evil. I mean, it was evil to the core. There was no way to go and say, hey, well, here's this one redeeming value, because I don't think Brother Love had any.
I love that. Stuart wants to know, who's the funniest wrestler he's ever known off screen? So not on camera funny.
There's, there are quite a few. Brad Armstrong's one that comes to mind straight away, because Brad Armstrong could make you laugh. Just, the hell was that? Did you see this thing come up in the thing?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, it was on your iPad. And whenever you're doing it from an iPad and you show it a thumbs up, it's going to do it back.
Why? How do I turn that off?
I don't know. I don't do podcasts from iPads. I've never done that.
Well, you're the one that told me that that's the best way to do it. So that's why I'm doing it that way. So anyway, Brad Armstrong was excellent. And Brad Armstrong could just sit there and crack you up all day and night long. It was everything. Everything was an insightful answer to anybody's question, or an insightful question to anybody's answer. Constantly, Arn Anderson is one of the funniest people that you'd ever want to meet off screen, because he just would continue on and and had a very quick wit. Bobby Heenan, now Bobby was funny on screen and off. I dare say that Bobby was funnier off screen.
Wow.
Because he just never stopped. Gorilla Monsoon off screen, absolutely hilarious. And then, the other one I think that a lot of people will be shocked at would be William Regal is positively hilarious.
He's got a deadpan delivery too that makes him even funnier, doesn't he?
Which is funnier, yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Like what he's saying is funny, but it's the way he says it and how he delivers it. So stone-faced and matter of fact, as if it's not a joke, that makes it just over the top.
Right.
Let's do another one here. Mr. Jamie. And boy, this is a question that's right up your alley. What has surprised you most from the Paul Bosch collection? So first of all, I guess explain to everybody what the Paul Bosch collection is, and then take us through some of the things that you were really surprised to see.
I think, okay, what the Paul Bosch collection is I purchased Paul's personal office that he had in his home with all of his pictures and all of his awards and different things, and but his personal artifacts. I thought I was getting everything, but a little misled there. That's beside the point. Things happen. And when everything arrived, I really didn't know what I was getting, because it was more of a gesture to help his adopted son get into a special school. His adopted son is blind and has cerebral palsy. Very talented gentleman, but when his mother passed, there was no one really there to take care of him. They didn't have 24-hour care for him. And it was to be able to pay that tuition for a while. And I was happy to do it. But I wanted, I wanted a lot of that stuff. And Valerie had always told me, Valerie, Paul's widow, had always told me, this is all yours when Paul passes. And I was like, I won't just take it. There's no way I'll just take it. I will pay you for it. And so I took care of Joey's getting him into this school, getting all that done. And they boxed it up. I paid for the
shipping,
moving service to go over and take everything down, clean everything up, and box it all up and send it. And I got a lot of things that I'd never, wanted in a million years, like about 42 Best of Don Ho albums and things of that nature. But there were statues, tons of pictures, tons of things. I think that Paul wrote everything down, which is kind of where I got it from. I'm a note taker. I write things down. I write feelings down in the moment. So you can go back and look at my date books that I have in my other office in there, and you can see, like, on such and such a date, so-and-so was in a bad mood, had a bad day, this happened, that happened, this happened. Oh my God, great news. We're going to do this on such and such a date. I just kind of wrote stream of consciousness down a lot. Paul did the same thing. That's probably where I got it from, subconsciously. And reading some of those were fascinating. The notes that he used to take on the WWE programming during the time was, again, fascinating, because he would correct Gene Okerlund's grammar.
Wow.
He would write down, Okerlund said, blah, blah, blah. And then he would write the proper way to say it. The other really kind of cool stuff, I love the financials, where, when he hit when he had his first ever $1 million year, when he would project what he would do for the year and like, right, disappointing, or that's a good one, just little things like that. Found a lot of correspondence to him, but then he would write back and he would make a copy of the letters or whatever that he would write back and keep those. In here somewhere, I have that somewhere in here. I have a Dave Meltzer thing somewhere in here, but
where he was talking to Dave or he was writing about Dave?
Where Dave was lying about things. I don't know. But things like that. Just pictures of him in Japan and in Hawaii, and different tidbits. It was more the tidbits that were like, God, this is fascinating. There is about half a dozen boxes, and probably about this size, maybe smaller, but you know what I'm talking about, like those little newspaper people write, on their little notepads.
Yeah.
Boxes of war plans for World War II, for the battle for the Hurtgen Forest that he wrote a book about. And they're literal battle plans. There are places in the middle of it where you pull it out and there's maps. And there's this infantry here, this group here, and arrows and things and of that nature that just, I was amazed. But you could go down a rabbit hole big time. I still haven't been able to get through all of it. My wife finally got tired of it taking up half of the basement and went through and threw away a lot of duplicate stuff, duplicate things that had nothing to do with wrestling. And then I started looking at it and go, yeah, but I still don't need Don Ho's best hits, greatest hits. And we threw that away too. So there was a lot of just great memorabilia, but not just wrestling. I think when you go back, and if you're a war buff in it all, it was fascinating to see the guy who is handwriting the here are the plans, guys. That's what we're going to do. And that was incredible. But just also notes about, reminder to call Wahoo. Wahoo will be in North Carolina on such and such a date. Andre will be in Montreal on such and such a date, so that he knew they would be there and that he could call them and talk to them. It was just a different time. We didn't have cell phones then.
I got to ask, pardon my ignorance, but did you just say Paul Bosch wrote a book about battle?
Yeah. The Road to Hurtgen, or the Hurtgen Forest.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah. And it's an excellent book. I mean, I'm not, somebody that I like history. I love reading about that stuff, but I would probably have to admit that before I read Paul's book, that I wasn't really that big of a history buff. And once I read his book, very interesting. But then once, now that I have the actual battle plans and things of that nature, it's even more interesting.
Yeah, I just found it on Amazon. This is amazing. Yeah. How did I not know this? The Road to Hurricane Forest in Hell is the name of it.
Yeah, I got a whole box of them here if you think we should sell them or something.
Yeah, I'll take one. I'd like to have one.
That's $85.
Well, it's $11 on Amazon. So
what?
Yeah, it's $11 and I can have it Friday.
Is it signed?
No.
Okay then.
I see.
I think all mine are signed.
Man,
I don't know. I have to look, but I do have a bunch of them.
You never know.
Brand new in the box, just full. And I also have Hey Boy, Where'd You Get Them Ears? That was never really officially published. Paul self-published it. But it's the book that that was going to be Paul's quintessential wrestling book. And I've got quite a few of those as well. You know, it reads, it was during a time when Paul was not really pleased with the business. So it skewed very heavily towards, you know, back in my day.
Yeah.
Everything we did was better. These damn young kids coming up today, they're ruining the business. Every old timer I've ever met, probably including myself, every old timer you meet will tell you why the business today is just killing the business. Be doing record business and doing more than anyone could ever possibly imagine. And an old timer is going to tell you everything that's wrong with the business. This book is an entire book of that. However, it is also it's a tough read, man. And I love the business. Maybe it's a tough read because for me, I did the research on it. I went through and grabbed all the Ring magazines and did all the pulled everything for Paul. So I'd already read it in its original form. The tone is the word I'm looking for. It's just a bit of bitterness in the tone of the book.
That's disappointing to you. Because it's not the Paul that you want to remember.
Exactly. And the Paul that was before 1983, 84, the Paul before 1984 was really a visionary and genuinely loved what he did. Loved everything about the business, loved just walking and breathing the air that was wrestling. That was Paul. So this is not that. And once Paul hit a point in his career that he felt he no longer could control his own destiny and that the talent had kind of taken over, he just really got into I'm going to come in and do my time. I am owed this. So I'm going to come in and take my money and go. And that's not really who he was, in my opinion. And I think the business at a certain point in time kind of turned him that way. And that, again, you want to remember people how you knew them best in the best times. You try hard and you struggle to not remember, you know, all the miserable times. Even though, you know, look, I had fun in some of the miserable times. I would make fun of things and just say, yeah, you know what, man, it's still fun. I'm still living my dream. So I'll find a way to make it work. But I think we can all get lost in our own misery that we put upon ourselves. And that was one of the things in reading it that I felt, come on, Paul, you know, if this were you doing it, you would be applauding this as the greatest thing ever. And that's all.
I wonder, you know, because I know once upon a time you started writing a book, and we know that, you know, you pressed pause on that. But I do feel like the same probably could have been said about you, just about anybody. Like, you know, there was a time where you looked back and you didn't look back fondly on wrestling.
Didn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a time that, look, I didn't want to be in business. I felt that the business didn't want me, so I didn't want it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. You and I became friends, and you remember early on, I didn't want to talk about the business.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, no, man, that's in my past. It's in my rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And the more, you dug. What's the phrase you use? Ed Koski uses it on me all the time.
Chat me up.
Yeah, chat me up. Chat me up, Bruce. And I began to open up into little things. And as you pick away at the scar,
yeah,
a lot of times the blood underneath, that's fresh blood, and it kind of makes you want more. And I realized that it wasn't the business. It wasn't the business that I was mad at or angry with or that didn't want me. It was me that was mad. I was mad at myself. And I took it out on the business. I took it out on everything, about the business. So I had no one to blame but myself. And I chose to be miserable. It's a choice. And that's why I say, having learned from my mistakes, I go, you have a choice. You can be miserable or you can go with it and enjoy life. Find something to enjoy.
Well, something I found I enjoy during football season is checking out those post-game stats. Which wideout scored more than 2 touchdowns? Which quarterback threw for less than 350 yards? Think you can pick who will do that before kickoff? Then you got to play Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, select between 2 and 6 players, and then choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. It really is that simple. And for all first-time Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers play $5 on your first pick set, and you get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STW. That's code STW for new customers to play $5 on your first pick set and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccp.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Let's do another question here. This one is from Brad Bell. I loved the what if style question in the last Ask Bruce episode. So I wanted to ask, if the steroid trial / investigation never happened, does Bruce think we still would have seen a movement to smaller, more technical wrestlers like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels?
That's a great question because it's really 2 parts. And the first part is, would Hogan have left? Because part of it was after WrestleMania 8, Hulk was looking to take not just a little time off, but Hulk was wanting to go away to go do movies and go do TV shows and things of that nature. Not wrestle every night. Did not want to be in the business every day anymore. He was not interested in working anymore. He wanted to try his hand in Hollywood. So Hulk was leaving, steroid trial or not. That left you, though, still with, a lot of guys that were big in nature. You had the Ultimate Warrior, you had Psycho Sid, people like that were big guys that had the look. And would that look have continued? Would first of all, would Warrior and Bulldog have left when they did? They were fired. They were fired for, steroids and for whatever it was, growth hormone, whatever the hell that was at the time. But would that have happened? Would the emphasis on a drug-free system been as strong as it was at that time? I think we would have gotten there regardless, because again, the NFL was moving there, the NBA was moving there, just trying to, and they weren't even looking for steroids. Steroids were the last thing on their checklist, and they were looking for cocaine and drugs of abuse. Well, really, when everything started, steroids were legal. They were prescribed by a doctor. So it just became a catch-22. So you have to wonder, man, well, if Hogan had stayed around, what would that look like? Would the emphasis still be on large, the big muscled up guys? And would there ever be a point where a Bret Hart or a Shawn Michaels could break through and become the stars that they became? I am an optimist in that I believe that the reason I picked Bret and Shawn is I believe that Bret and Shawn both had the ability and the talent to break through, and that they could have been 3 foot nothing and still could have broken through based on their talent, their charisma, their promo skills. Maybe not so much Bret, but hey, but no, Bret had an unspoken, man, rock star charisma. Shawn was Shawn, and they had great charisma that just shined through and really, really helped an awful lot. I think they eventually would have broken through. But I do think that there probably would have been an emphasis on larger talent for a while, at least. And then as things progressed, and you got to ask yourself too, if steroids had never, ever become,
a hot button issue
where they were illegal.
Yeah.
What would have happened?
It is interesting to think about. Tris Dixon says, what backstage fight did Bruce see that got the most out of control? What was the wildest backstage dust up you ever saw?
I saw the Jacques Rougeau and Dynamite Kid fight, which that wasn't so much out of control as much as it was just a brutal fight. From the standpoint of Jacques got that first punch in, and Dynamite Kid had nothing after that. And nobody jumped in because Raymond was there. Pat tried to break it up. Finally, they got them separated and got everybody away. It just was brutal. Look, real fights aren't that much fun when you're that close. Yeah, and it's even different when you go, oh, well, UFC and everything. UFC's controlled. When a fight is not controlled and you've got somebody beating the hell out of someone, and maybe it's one and or two of your friends,
that's not good.
It's a different feeling, and it's just not good. Shawn Michaels and Adnan Al-Kaisi got into a fight backstage at one point, and it was uncomfortable for two reasons. One, Adnan really wouldn't fight back for a couple of reasons. I think Adnan felt that he would have hurt Shawn.
Yeah.
Shawn was also on the way up. And I also think that Shawn regretted, even getting into the altercation. I think both men regretted getting into the altercation because they both felt like, oh man, why? How did we get to that? You know what I mean?
I know it sounds stupid, Bruce, but what was the issue? Do you recall? Like, I know now it doesn't even matter, but what I mean, it's hard for me to imagine.
Between Shawn and Adnan?
Yeah.
It was during the Iraq War, and Adnan had not been able to get a hold of his family. When he got a hold of his family, found out someone in his family had been killed.
Oh.
And Adnan was upset at TV, and words were exchanged, and it just escalated. And it just escalated to where, I think Adnan threw a chair and Shawn came at him and, kicked him. And then it was Adnan was just basically protecting himself. But Adnan, look, he was an old shooter. He was also much older at the time, so who knows? But you could tell Shawn didn't really want to fight him.
No.
And Adnan didn't want to fight Shawn. And afterwards, when you get together and apologize, well, what were we even fighting about? Man, I'm sorry, I didn't know about your family. Silly things can escalate when you don't have all the knowledge. And things like that, I've never, I've seen just Virgil. I've seen Virgil just beat the hell out of a fan who hit DiBiase one time. That was one of the most one-sided. The guy started bouncing like he thought he was Donnie Lalonde or something, and Virgil just came in with about 4 punches, and on the first one, you could see the ducks and birds flying over his head because he was out. He was done, and Virgil followed up all the way to the ground. And just seeing things like that, just different stuff. Butch Reed and the Barbarian.
Oh, God damn.
But they got tired, nobody wanted, again, they wanted to fight until they got to the fight.
Right.
Everybody wants to fight till you get hit.
Yeah.
So, it's different feel and different thing when it's actually people, and your friends that are hitting each other and you're watching blood come out of their eye or somebody going for an eye, things like that. It's just not a lot of fun to watch. And it happens, but especially in this business, man, it ain't ballet. Some things happen in the ring that are accidents. Things are said backstage when you're pissed off. Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle, where Eddie Guerrero tried to double leg Kurt Angle. It's like, Eddie, you tried to double leg an Olympic gold medalist. And he just, I know, I'm stupid. But it was just frustration on Eddie's part. He was just frustrated.
Yeah.
And that frustration came out because it's a physical business in physicality. So I think the worst was probably, watching Jacques Rougeau and Dynamite Kid, because Dynamite just had nothing there. He had nothing, never had a chance.
Well, I want you guys to give a chance to a friend of the show, Chris Van Vliet. He's got a great podcast called Insight with Chris Van Vliet, where he's sitting down for some of the more interesting and in-depth wrestling conversations you'll find anywhere. Chris really asks great questions, and then he allows his guests to open up and tell stories they've never heard before, or we've never heard before, rather. I've learned a lot. I mean, he's recently hooked up with The Undertaker and Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre and Rey Mysterio and even Jesse Ventura. And there's hundreds of others. Hell, I've even been a guest on Chris's podcast. Look for Insight with Chris Van Vliet on YouTube, as well as Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to this. Highly recommend it. And let me spell Vliet for you. That's Vliet. I struggled with that, but once I found it, boy, I sure am glad I did. So if you're looking for some interviews with some of the stars of yesteryear and today, man, look no further than our buddy Chris Van Vliet's Insight with Chris Van Vliet, anywhere you enjoy podcasts. Hey, we got a question here from J.M. Wagner, who says, Bruce, can you think of any ideas or stories that Vince was adamant about and you thought didn't work, but you did it anyway?
Probably a lot. Wow. I got to think about this. I think going back and thinking about timing. So Hakushi, and these are going to be ones you're going to go, what? Like Hakushi and Bret Hart.
Yeah.
I felt that Hakushi could have been a player.
I do too.
But Hakushi needed to be built first.
Yes.
Instead, Hakushi was brought in, put with Bret, beat, next.
Yeah.
in seeing him originally, it was like, man, this guy could possibly be in a main event level match at WrestleMania. You could see him as an opponent for The Undertaker. You could see him as an opponent for the championship against Brett. There were quite a few possibilities, for the future for him. And, you look at some of I wasn't there when Hulk and Ric Flair had their time in WWE and did live events that failed. I think that no matter what people thought in their different sides, they were different sides. You needed to build that in one place and build it. Same thing. It just needed to be built. And sometimes either things were rushed or cut off before their times. Wasn't a fan at all of Beefcake and Hogan is the team to face Savage and Zeus. It just came out of nowhere because Beefcake was Hulk's buddy.
Who would you have preferred in that spot instead?
I would have preferred the one-on-one with Savage in the corner. And then built to whoever it is that we could have gotten. I would have rather had Tugboat, frankly, than Beefcake at that point. Because Beefcake was so limited in what he could do. His face had the mask. There wasn't a whole lot he could do.
Wait, hang on. I think we're getting the timelines confused because Beefcake, you're talking about SummerSlam.
I'm talking about SummerSlam, and that was actually before. That was before.
Yeah. SummerSlam was pre-accident. That was 88. You're thinking about 93.
Okay. Beefcake had the face without the mask. It was very limited for him.
Okay. I'm with you.
Okay. I was trying to be nice. I was searching for something.
You just weren't, you didn't see him at that level.
To me, it was a complete force to make Hulk happy at the time. And it didn't fit. There were also things where we were looking at No Holds Barred. Was there somebody in No Holds Barred?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Stan
Get the guy who played Randy or something out there in his corner if Randy's in the other corner.
Yes, something.
Yeah.
But again, you had brand new guys. You could have used an Abdullah the Butcher. You could have used Stan Hansen. There were other talent that were out there that could have come in and been on the heel side or the babyface side. Keep Randy if you wanted to, keep Randy as a babyface with Hulk to go against Stan Hansen and Zeus. Or you could have brought Hansen in as Hogan's buddy from the movie.
Okay, so you're saying in that other scenario, because I'm interested in this, in a post-WrestleMania 5 world, have a story where Hogan and Savage reunite and get back together to fend off Zeus and perhaps Stan Hansen.
Or an Abdullah the Butcher.
Okay.
Or somebody like that. But there was also talk about Stan Hansen coming in and working a program with Hulk Hogan.
Wow.
That never happened, never materialized. I don't think that ever got past the talking stages. But if you're talking about a what if scenario, what if Stan Hansen had come in and Stan Hansen had been the partner of Hulk Hogan and be like, yeah, I was on that movie set. This goddamn guy over here, this Hollywood actor thinks he's tough. Well, I'm going to show him how tough he is. That would have fit.
Yeah.
And you could have made someone new, actually 2 people, but you had Hogan Savage as your anchors.
Right. So use it to get other people
around them.
Why didn't the Hansen thing develop? Was it based on schedule? Because we know that everybody wanted to protect their Japanese money. I get that. They're making good money. It's a limited schedule. You can't have photos of them doing jobs. I understand all that. But I also know that he could have, I shouldn't say I know. I feel like working on top, he would have made more than what he was making in Japan but he probably would have had more dates. Was he concerned that if he did lose on a national or global stage like the WWF, that when his WWF run was over, it would have affected his marketability in Japan? Or am I overthinking all that?
I couldn't even begin to tell you what Stan was thinking. I know that he had a great gig in Japan. He had a great gig with making good money and a great schedule. Why, if you've lived that life for so long and there's really no end in sight, why would you jeopardize that to do something else for more money, but a lot more work that would go into that? So I am only surmising and guessing. If I'm Stan Hansen, I would think, you know what? I've got a great schedule and making great money. I get to see my wife and kids and stay home and not be on a plane every day. I'm going to keep this gig for a while.
Man, it's so fascinating to think about what if. You just casually sort of threw in Abdullah the Butcher. Do you remember having conversations with Vince about Abdullah the Butcher? Why did that never go anywhere?
I don't know. I don't know if Abby, Abby had a good reputation. Abby had a bad reputation. And for those that loved him, they loved him. For those that didn't, they hated him. So I don't know where Vince fit into that, other than there was never any feeling that Abdullah could come in and work a steady schedule, which is what he would have to have done, and been able to hang up here on the kind of schedule that we were running at the time. I remember bringing in Joe LeDuc from Montreal, and Joe was, boy, you talk about tough. Joe was a crazy tough guy, crazy French Canadian. But Joe hated the schedule. Joe was another one that came from No Holds Barred. But he hated the schedule. He was like, oh my God, he had worked territories. He drove in between. Now all of a sudden you're in LA one night, you're in Chicago the next, you're in Montreal the next night, and you're back to San Diego the next. It's not for everybody. So that didn't last long at all. But Joe was one of those that was looked at as a big monster, tough guy that could be an opponent for Hogan at the time.
Really fun question here from the Rosen Coaster. He wants to know, when watching WWE programming on the hard camera, why does the entrance ramp come from the left side on the TV screen? Is it a particular preference from production or something to do with the buildings?
No, it's just usually you have to know where your VOMs are in the building. For those who don't know what a VOM is, it's a vomitorium. And in ancient Rome, when they built the Colosseum, and they built these big Colosseums where they used to have the gladiators come and fight, there were sections in the Colosseums called vomitoriums, because the rich would drink so much wine and they would and just engulf a bunch of food and cheese and salami and pastrami's and pizzas and popcorn and whatever, and then they would drink to excess, and then they would vomit. And the vomitorium was the area that they used to vomit into, hence called the vomitorium. These became parts of arenas and coliseums when they were designed in later years. The use for them is that's where you bring in your larger items. If you're going to set up a stage, if you're going to set something large up in the arena, you need a vomitorium. You need an area where you're going to bring a lot of these in. They're also used for entrance and access to the floor for the audience in arenas today. But we still call them, the VOM. And that's why, they're called vomitorium. So your question is, and I'm going to answer it now, is essentially that's usually the largest open end of the arena is off to the left, and you want to shoot into an audience. You want to shoot into an audience full of people. You don't want to shoot into an area that half of the time is going to be empty, and I'm just looking at a logo or doors or an entrance or something like that. That just looks bad. You want to shoot into people. You want to see people having fun and being involved in what you're presenting.
Help me understand though, like, isn't there a vomitorium right across from you as well in the arena? Why couldn't the arena
Not
or the
always.
ramp come from the right? Like, I do think it's a fair question. We almost never see it from the right.
Yeah, but that's not correct. There's usually not. In a lot of arenas there may be, but usually no. Usually there's only one large. It's usually by the loading dock side that they come in, and the other area is usually closed off. But you still have smaller bombs where they can come in from the side and corners and things like that.
Let me just say, all this discussion about vomitorium, it's pretty gross. And maybe sometimes after a long day at work, you're smelling pretty gross. Can I recommend Mando's whole body deodorant? I got to tell you, my wife introduced this to me. I saw her squirting this out of a tube onto her fingers and applying it to herself in a place where I said, "Hey, what is that?" And she explained, it's whole body deodorant. It turns out it's dermatologist tested. It's gentle on all your bits, and it controls your odor for 72 hours. That's been clinically proven. They've got 4 different cologne quality scents, and they've even got unscented if you want to get stealthy. I'm a big believer in this. I got to tell you, I was familiar with a stick of deodorant, but this whole cream tube, man, that's new information for me. I did not know that this was even possible. And because this cream is invisible, it's easy to apply to those hard to reach spots. It doesn't get on your clothes. It smells really good. You can get scents like bourbon leather or clover woods or Mount Fuji or Pro Sport or even unscented, but it's safe to use everywhere. And I mean everywhere. We're talking about your pits, your packages, your stinky crevices, your stomach folds, your feet, whatever you got going on. You need to know that it's safe to use on your whole body, but it's strong enough to tackle even the toughest odors. And I'm talking about down yonder. It's aluminum free. It's baking soda free. It's cruelty free. It's dye free, and it's vegan. And it's been clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower with soap alone. I highly recommend this. I think you will too. The science tells us this is legit, man. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was just really being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And did I mention that Mando is made in the USA? So let me be clear. You've got a stick of deodorant that'll go 72 hours for you with no aluminum, no benzene, no parabens. It's dye free. You've also got the cream tube deodorant. They got body wash now powered by mandelic acid. It's going to give you 24-hour odor control. It even does like a sudsy lather. How about the cleansing bar? Man, this is like an all-in-one fix it, if you will. And the deodorant wipes, man, it lets you feel like you had a shower without actually needing a shower. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant and the cream tube deodorant and 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Luckily, I've got a discount code to help you get hooked up on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack. Use the code STW at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Shopmando.com.
It even keeps Kane's stinky feet stink free. Stinky feet stink free. Stinky feet stink free. Stinky feet stink free. Okay.
We got another question here from Joe. When Hogan would tear his shirt, he'd always struggle at the bottom. Why didn't anyone ever cut the bottom so he could tear the entire shirt? I don't know why that tickles me, but I've never noticed that.
Well, who asked that, Steve?
Joe?
Joe? Try it out sometime, kid. Let me know how it works out for you.
Richard Street says, if the Texas tornado would have been in better health, mentally and physically? Is he someone that could have been built into a heel as a credible foe for Hogan? In Texas, of course, he was a babyface for life, but on the global stage, I think he could have been otherwise. What do you think? Could you have seen Carrie Von Eric as a heel?
No. Carrie Von Eric was just too nice of a human being, I think, to be a heel. And Carrie was so likable and just such a great guy that it was I don't know, man. He could have cut the Pope's head off and still been cheered. There was just something about him that people really liked. He was a genuinely nice person. So to hate Carrie Von Eric would have been a very difficult thing. Now, had Carrie stayed straight and Carrie been able to continue on, I could have seen Carrie as the WWE champion. And that would have been an unbelievable story. But I also think that it would have needed to tell the entire story and let people know that, hey, he's working, with a nub here. He doesn't have a foot. And that was an incredible story. What Carrie Von Eric did and what he was able to accomplish after the motorcycle accident where he lost his foot is an incredible story, and one that should have been told, properly. And, it was told in Iron Claw, and they did the very best they could do in that time frame. I don't know how you tell that family story in under 2 hours. That's a hard one. So if you were able to tell the whole story of Carrie Von Eric, I could have seen him be one of the biggest champions of all time.
It's interesting to think about what if. We talk a lot about what if, but I think everybody knows. But Carrie Von Eric passed away when he was just 33 years old in 1993. So just going forward 10 years, man, the way the business looked in 93 versus the way it looked in 03 were two totally, entirely different businesses. And he would have just been 43 years old. So even if you fast forward to 2013, he would have just been 50. 53 years old, but still, the point is, man, there was a lot of life left for Carrie Von Eric in the pro wrestling business. But to think about Carrie through the Austin era, through the New Generation era, through the Attitude era, through a post-merger of WWF and WCW, post-acquisition, that's crazy to think about, isn't it?
Carrie Von Eric, was one of the biggest stars in the business and could have been one of the biggest stars of all time in the business had he stuck around.
If you could have close your eyes and imagine, I know you've never spent any brain power on this, but just off the top, who would have been fun to see him work with in the Attitude Era? Like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, The Rock, Stone Cold. Is there somebody that comes to mind right away where you're like, man, now that would have been fun?
Right on down the list. You think of Carrie Von Eric and The Rock. Holy cow. Just going back and forth. Carrie wasn't the greatest on promos, but working with The Rock could have gotten more personality out of Carrie. Would have loved to have seen Carrie in Cactus. Mankind would have been incredible. Carrie and The Undertaker would have been great. So to me, there's nobody in the Attitude Era that would have been off limits that you would have said, wow, that doesn't work. I think every opportunity in the Attitude Era for Carrie Von Eric was a good one.
Even thinking about the New Generation, like him in there with Razor and Diesel and Shawn.
Oh, yeah.
Man, what a great what ifs that I've never really spent any time thinking about until right now. Here's another one. This is a fun one too, Bruce. Eric Sandler says, if Bruce could have grown up as a kid in any of the classic territories other than Houston, which one would he pick and why?
Probably, I would say New York because of the aura of the Garden and Bruno. However, as a kid, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy it because of the state law or state athletic commission law that you couldn't even go to the Garden until you were 14 years of age. So I wouldn't have been able to enjoy it the same way. So we'll ixnay New York. Probably, I would say either Atlanta or Tampa.
Yeah, I could see you digging I thought for sure you were going to say Florida. So I'm not surprised that you said that one. But Atlanta is a bit of a shock. What about Atlanta intrigues you?
Well, because Atlanta had partners and was able to draw from the Carolinas. They were able to draw from Florida, and they were right smack dab in the middle and had such a powerful base with Barnett that they got great talent, very much like Houston. They got a lot of outside talent to come in and work in Atlanta that you weren't seeing the same guys every single week. You had your base like everybody else did, but you had a lot of outside talent come through Atlanta because that was another place to be able to show your wares. And I'll throw in St. Louis too.
Lady H has a fun question. I've heard it said from JR that Big Show wasn't used right when he first got to WWE. What would you have done differently?
Well, a few things. I think that the Big Show coming in initially, if you're going to make a monster and have the monster beat the biggest guy that was Stone Cold Steve Austin, and to have a monster like the Big Show that's undefeated and unbeatable, that is a hell of an opportunity to build somebody from. Another way to do it would have been to bring him in as Steve's guy and be the big baby face and be the equalizer on the babyface side to help a Stone Cold Steve Austin against guys like Rock and Taker. And, you can on down the line, you can make your heel factory to be able to feed the Giant, make him a babyface until it was time for Big Show to turn. And then at that point, then Big Show creams Austin and moves on. And you've got, years to play with from there. But he was immediately brought in, immediately beaten, and immediately didn't mean anything anymore.
Forever 314 says, what does Bruce think Eddie Guerrero would be doing today if he was still with us? I imagine he would get a kick out of everything Dirty Dominic's been doing. I know we don't talk about current stuff, Bruce, but I saw something last week that just made me grin ear to ear. I don't remember if it was Friday or Saturday, but Dominic Mysterio tweeted out a picture of his new piece of merch, his new shirt, Latino Cheat. And man, I just couldn't help but smile big. I know we don't talk about current stuff, but that was so cool. And I think Forever 314 has a great question. What do you think Eddie Guerrero would be doing in 2024 if he were still with us?
Well, first of all, I think that Eddie would be very proud of his son, Dominic. Help coach him quite a bit. Truth be told, he would be helping to coach Dominic quite a bit. And Eddie was very fond of Dominic and thought that Dominic, even then, we all did, the kid's going to be in the business. Little did we know, he wanted nothing to do with the business. But then he did, and he does, and he's awesome. I think Eddie would still be a part of it. I think Eddie would still be calling me and telling me everything that is wrong with it. And then at the end of the day, come back the next day and say, you're right. Or no, Eddie would fight you, man. Eddie would fight you. And I enjoyed that. I always enjoyed the sparring sessions with Eddie on philosophy about the business, because Eddie was rooted in old school wrestling, old school tradition, in and out of the ring. But you also have to take into consideration that Eddie was also rooted in both American wrestling and what we know for the most part, today, even though the business has changed, American style wrestling, as well as lucha style wrestling and the luchadors, because his father promoted both. And his father was one of the most innovative promoters and performers of his day, Gory Guerrero. And Eddie learned all sides. It was a family business for Eddie. You know, his mom was in the business. Everybody was in the business. And when you talk about eat, sleep, drink wrestling, that's what Eddie Guerrero did. It just was in his DNA and it was in his life. Eddie would be a part of the business, and Eddie would have very strong feelings about the business and continually looking to grow the business and find different ways to do the same things.
Fun question here from Jonathan, who says, hi, Bruce and Conrad. The 80s and 90s period was so great for heel managers. How was the decision made on which wrestlers to give to either Bobby, Jimmy Hart, Fuji, or Slick? That is interesting. I mean, I assume you guys just have a notebook sheet of paper and you got all the names. You want to make sure you're not too lopsided, just from an efficiency standpoint. And logistically, we can only have these guys manage so many and who's touring there. And I know all that comes into play. But were you thinking about personalities as well? And how do you divide those up?
Yeah, I'm surprised no one's ever talked about this before. But we had a box in the corner.
Oh, gosh.
And it was like labeled box of managers. And you just drew. You had a new talent come in, and your manager, okay, see who's going to get it. Oh, looky there. Old Blue won the pony.
All right, so that's going to be our answer. Let me just tell you now, there is no box of gimmicks, but there is a box of great cereal in your future without all the sugar. Of course, I'm talking about our friends at Magic Spoon. We talked about managers in the 80s and 90s. Well, that's the era where I would wake up on the weekend, get a big old bowl and pour it full of cereal that I learned later was full of sugar. Now, as an adult, I know I don't need that first thing in the morning. What I really need is protein. And my wife found Magic Spoon. It's a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like my childhood favorites, but without all the sugar and with a ton of protein. And if you're already on the Magic Spoon bus, let me just mention, they got great news because they've turned their super popular cereal into high protein treats. And they're fantastic. They taste just like the ones that Mom used to make. And now they're my go-to. And here's why my wife is all on board with Magic Spoon. Every serving of Magic Spoon has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and only 4 grams of net carbs. So you can feel good about what you're eating. The most popular flavors are fruity and cocoa, and there's so many more. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are crispy, they're crunchy, they're airy, and it's an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. And now for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. But man, my go-to is the double chocolate. My goodness, it's so awesome. You got to try it. And I want you to get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/wrestle, or just look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in the nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/wrestle for $5 off. Magic Spoon. Hold on to the dream. Here's one
that
from
was my breakfast this morning.
Dude, it's so good.
Yeah, man.
Seriously, I know that we've talked about Magic Spoon before. I've always loved their cereal. I always will love their cereal. But these treats, if you've never tried them, dude, you're missing out. Go right now. I'm talking about today. Yeah. And hit up magicspoon.com/wrestle. Use our promo code Wrestle. It's even cheaper than what you can get it in a grocery store. But that double chocolate, man, it ought to be illegal. It's so good. Go check it out. Simon says, what's one thing that you enjoyed from the Monday Night Wars and one thing you hated? So with the benefit of hindsight, what's the one thing you miss about that era? And what's the one thing you're glad you don't have to deal with anymore?
Well, I love being live. At the time, I love being live, because when it's done, it's done. And whatever happened during that program was meant to happen, man, because it was live, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And that is what I loved most then. It's what probably I love most now. as well. The things that I didn't like. First of all, I hated taping them because it gave you time to rethink and things of that nature, and play with it. I don't know. God, things that.
While you're thinking about that, let me ask: has anybody ever used that against you? The whole, if it was live, it's meant to happen. Like, does anybody go out there and fuck something up royally? Like, they went way over on time. They botched something big. They said the wrong thing. They were in the wrong spot at the wrong time. They knew they messed up. You knew they messed up. They come through the curtain, and before you can blast them, they just put their hand on your shoulder and say, "It was live, Bruce. It was meant to happen." That's the way it was supposed to go because it was live.
Oh, I've had that, and I've had it the other way too, to where I've tried to say, "Hey, look, man, we knew what was supposed to happen. Nobody else did." Okay. That's the other one. So I've actually had both of those thrown in my face quite a bit. But you still can't argue the other side. Right. And it's like, you know what? It's like we knew what was supposed to happen. It didn't happen. But nobody else did. Yeah, well, it's still a fucking chance. Okay.
Adam Arpin says,
but only we know that.
That's right. If Randy Savage had come back to the WWE post WCW acquisition, when would the right time have been? Could it have been WrestleMania 8? So you had Rock and Hogan and perhaps Austin Savage, or would it have been in 03 as a part of the whole Mr. America angle or something else?
Savage was there in 8. Did you mean something else?
No, X8. You know what I mean? Like 18. So when there's Rock and Hogan and you put Scott Hall in there with Austin, he's suggesting Savage Austin could have been better than Scott Hall and Austin. It would have felt like the icons of the generation before in the WWF and now current day with Rock and Austin taking on Hogan and Savage.
I mean, again, that's all subjective. You got to be in the moment. And this is the part that no one will ever understand unless you've been there. And when I say unless you've been there, unless you have been there for more than 2 to 3 years and experience in dealing with the personalities, the egos, the bookings, the travel, the arenas, the other egos, until you've dealt with all of it, it's very easy for people to say, "Oh, well, you could have just put Savage in there, and that would have been better." Okay. Then what? Then what's the finish? Then after you give me that finish, then tell me what's next after that for the next 6 months. And that's where the conversations usually end, because there's a lot of times where things will be presented. People say, "Well, I don't know. That doesn't really feel right to me. Why don't we do this?" Cool. Let's try that on. We do that. What do we do next week? What's the follow-up? Well, I don't know. We'll just figure that out. I know, but we have this figured out. This has a direction. This has a story. This has something laid out for a while. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But usually you've got a story laid out. You've got a direction of where you want to go. And you change one thing. That's cool, man. That may be really great for that one day. But you have to think of the next day and the next week and the next month, and frankly, the next year. And not just how it affects that one person, because you're taking somebody else out. How does it affect everything else? And then the dominoes start to fall. And when you're the one having to pick up the dominoes, it's, it can be a little challenging sometimes. So the what that's when people give me, "Oh, well, you could have done this." Really?
Well, I don't think he's.
No. I'm not saying you did that. I'm saying in general, when people do that, it's like they'll go, well, so and so only, didn't work on every third Tuesday, and that's when we had this event. Things like that, that people don't know. That we know that we have to work around and work with. So when that happens, it's, you have to weigh in so many different things and figure it all out before you can actually say, yes, this is what we're going to do. Make that decision.
As a fan, just fantasy booking with the benefit of hindsight, when do you think it would have been most interesting to slide Savage back in a post WCW world?
Well, in a post WCW world, I think that Randy, frankly, coming out at 17 would have been through the roof. And where I'm going with that is from the standpoint of right after Rock, let's maybe take Vince out. And again, in your fantasy booking, what would you do? But again, you would have had to have known what you had. Take Vince out, Savage comes back in with with Rock and Austin, and throw Savage into that mix. I think could have blown the roof off the place. That would have been a time. Another time would have been right after the NWO came in as an opposition to the NWO. And I think that definitely could have been bigger, as you said, instead of Steve and Razor, Steve and Savage is huge.
That invasion angle could have looked a little differently too with Savage. I mean, because he could have been on either side really at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Savage could have been in what they call it, the third man or whatever.
Yes.
Savage could have been in that third man, thing. Mabel wasn't available, but,
Chris has a great question. Before Shawn's injury at the 98 Rumble, what were the plans for him post WrestleMania 14? That's interesting because we know that he's going to finish up really at WrestleMania 14 after he drops it to Austin, and he's gone until he comes back for that fabulous match against Triple H at SummerSlam 02. But if you had to really think about it, do you recall what the plans sort of post WrestleMania would have been had Shawn not been injured? Like, what would have been fun with the Austin era? He's the top guy. Now what's Shawn going to do? A series of rematches or something else?
Well, obviously, I think that the rematches would have been something that would have been done. But again, that's kind of one of those where what would you have done if you were God and you could do this? That was never a consideration. It was never, okay, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. There is no tomorrow. So don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow was never thought of because we knew it wasn't going to happen. So that there were never any what ifs on that. There weren't any, well, we could do this, we could do that. It was Shawn's gone. We're moving on with Steve. Next.
Well, something that's not gone is your erection, thanks to our friends at Blue Chew. They say first impressions are important, but what about lasting impressions? Well, that's where Blue Chew comes in. Think of it as like a hot tag for your wiener. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. And the process is really simple. You sign up at BlueChew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, and it's all done online, which means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants you to have the confidence to perform at your best, so discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is Wrestle, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Let's do another one here. This one is interesting. Jesse says, what's one of your favorite wrestling memories as a kid? It could be a match, an angle, or a promo that once you rewatched it as an adult, you thought, well, that's not as great as I remember.
Most of them. Nothing's ever as good as, how you remember it as a kid, man, and the magic and the smell of the popcorn and the stale beer and cigarettes and just you name it. It's different. I watched something last night. A lot of times I'll go down that damn rabbit hole and, I'll just start clicking on different things. And one of them was an interview with Paul Bosch for a local television station, Channel 13. And Paul was talking about the beauty of wrestling is, someone said, people don't say to you, is this real or anything because you take great offense. And he read a poem in his book, Much of Me in each of these. We're plugging a lot of Paul books today. And he's talking, Paul said, goes, I see great beauty in the physique and a man that keeps up his physique in great condition to compete at the level that they compete. And they go to, on the news clip, they go to Jose Lothario and Stan Stasiak. And Jose was solid, but Jose was a bodybuilder by no stretch of the imagination. Jose looked like he was an everyman's man. Stan Stasiak looked like a big, sloppy, big guy. But really, this was in his this is when he should have retired already. And he was not in the best shape. And I kind of, chuckle at that. So to that, I say almost everything when I kind of go back and I look at it with glee and say, oh my gosh, what's this going to be? And it's boring by today's standards. Again, I think if you were to go back and watch a football game from 1971, watch a football game today. It's slower. It's just not doesn't have the bells and whistles. So for me, there are quite a few probably that would fit that criteria. Somebody was talking the other day, oh, hey, trying to think of a finish for this. And said, how about a drop kick? And you go back and you watch. Back in the old days, a drop kick was a finish. A body slam was a finish. A suplex was a major finish because nobody did them until late 70s, or mid to late 70s. Very few guys did suplexes. Jack did, Jerry did, Dory, but not everybody did them. So what's common today, man, those were big finishes back in the day. And you watch that, people look at that and go, that's it? Yeah, he caught him. 1, 2, 3. And the psychology of the matches, in my opinion, in a lot of cases are better in yesteryear because talent sold and the boys sold, everything. Sometimes I think that people could argue to an incredibly ridiculous length. Others would just say, no, man, that's what you do. That's how you sell. But when I go back and romanticize about in general, talent and in general, great matches I remember as a kid and I watched them, I find myself not remembering it the same way. They could be a little disappointing. You go back and watch a Mil Mascaras match, for example. Mascaras would come in maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year. And in my mind, man, I would remember these incredible Mil Mascaras matches, man, because he would do the fucking flying headbutt, the tope, the Guadalajara, the everything under the sun, right? And that was incredible because you only saw it a couple times a year. And he was the only guy that did that stuff. He didn't have the guy in the first and second and third and fourth and fifth match doing all of his shit and not selling it. And then he has to go out and perform. No, Mascaras did his match and nobody else did his stuff. But when you go back and watch, if you watch them all, you go, oh, they're all just the same match. Usually different opponents, but for the most part, they're pretty much the same matches. He did his match. And he was smart in the way that he booked himself. You didn't get tired of Mascaras. You brought him in to bring in the Hispanic crowd. And Mascaras could face, Fred on the corner selling newspapers, and it would draw. It's just Mil Mascaras. Santo, same thing. But when you watch their match, if you want to analyze it today, they were the same matches. But we didn't have tape.
Right.
We didn't have computers. We didn't have that to go back and watch and analyze. We had only what we saw and how we wanted to remember it. So when I see things from yesteryear and I watch them and go, wow, that was rotten. And, a lot of times, man, it just was.
We lost Bruce, the Undertaker, gone this year.
This time I really don't know what happened, though. Wait a minute. I'm coming back. I promise.
He's in the dark. He's back.
I'm back.
Dong. Hey, one last question. Then we'll put him
yeah. So we had a spot planned for that, and then I blew it by trying to do something else. Sorry, I try to do a multitask at times.
I had so much fun with this. We got so many questions still to go. I think we do it again next week. This is so fun. But Victor is going to ask our last question today. This is a fun one too. I know we don't talk about current stuff, but I think we can work around it here. Is there anyone in particular from the current roster that would have thrived in the 80s WWF and vice versa? Is there someone from the 80s WWF that would really be thriving today in modern times of WWE?
Oh, quite a few. I think that a guy like Damian Priest, I think a guy like Gunther, Cody, I think they all would have thrived at that time. But Seth Rollins, please. I think that quite a few would have thrived and been huge in the 80s. To move the 80s into today, I think you would have to look at, guys like Shawn Michaels. I think Savage, absolutely. Frankly, Hulk Hogan, megastar, no matter where you put Hulk Hogan,
That's
any
right.
time frame, he's Hulk Hogan. And I think that he would have thrived now as he did then.
Bigelow would have worked, I think. Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, and some can argue that the Bigelow never really worked. At any time. Bigelow, I think a lot of times this causes a lot of controversy, I'm sure, because I love Scott, man. I'm a huge fan of his personally and professionally. But I think that Bigelow, much like Lex Luger, had a career on potential.
Mm.
And the potential of a Bam Bam Bigelow and what he could have been, to me, I don't think that Scott ever reached his true potential.
Rick Rude maybe would have been another. Steamboat, Tully Blanchard. I could see all those guys being successful today.
Absolutely. I think the only one I don't think that would have survived would be Steamboat, probably. From this vantage point, personality wise.
Okay.
And I don't know that Ricky would have had a strong enough personality to be able to go out and cut those promos each and every week and then do everything. In the ring, forget about it, man. He would do great. Rick Rude, please. Rick Rude would be awesome.
Well, these questions were awesome. Keep them coming. If you haven't already, go hit us up at somethingtowrestle.com and be sure to use that hashtag AskBruce. Also, while you're there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Turn on the notifications bell so you won't miss it the next time we're live. Man, we're on a roll with these Ask Bruce Anythings. I say we keep it going next week. This was fun for me, man.
I ain't scared.
All right. Well, boys and girls, that'll do it for us this week. I know we're a little later, but we do have a plan to get ahead by God, and we hope to be with you sooner rather than later right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Now they're gone. It's been 10 years since you ain't been around, and Lord, I miss my best friend now. Told you I'd learn more. I win. Rock on, everybody.
Howie Mandel here. Most people think cleaning is as simple as grabbing your favorite cleaner, giving it a spray, and poof, clean as a whistle, right? Wrong. What they don't realize is that in no time, those sneaky bacteria are back, throwing a party that you weren't invited to. Clean Habits isn't just any cleaning spray. Oh no, this is next level clean. It keeps those pesky bacteria away for up to 5 full days. Use code Howie10 for 10% off all Clean Habits products at getcleanhabits.com/Howie.
What would you do with 2 house payments? Tony Schiavone here to tell you about SaveWithConrad.com. When you refinance with Save with Conrad, you can do so with confidence, knowing not only will you get a great rate, but you will get to skip 2 house payments. You don't need perfect credit, and there's no money out of your pocket. Find out how we can help you skip 2 today at SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com.